In 1986, psychologists Gillian Cohen and Dorothy Faulkner performed an experiment where a group of participants needed to memorize the names, jobs, and hobbies of a series of strangers. The first conclusion of the study, that we suck at remembering names, surprised no one. But the surprising result was that, as it turns out, the name itself is not the issue. You see, one of the things the study very cleverly did was include the same word as both a name and a job. For instance, there were some people called something like Harry Baker, and there were other people who were actually bakers. So baker could be both a name or a job, and the amazing discovery was that despite being the same word, people remembered that much better who was a baker than who was called baker. This is known as the Baker-Baker paradox, but why does it happen? Well, the theory states that our memory stores information through layers of depth. The most superficial and weak layer is semantic. It stores information as just the arbitrary grouping of letters and numbers. For instance, it remembers baker as just another random 5-letter word. On the other hand, deeper layers memorize through meaning. They don't think of baker as another random word, but as a representation of a concept they already know, which in this case corresponds to the guy that makes delicious bread and cookies. This change of perspective is largely unconscious, but it is enough to make a tangible difference in our ability to memorize. And the cool thing is that we can use this effect intentionally to memorize the stuff we want to learn. In fact, several memory champions like Joshua Foer do this all the time to memorize hundreds of strangers' names and thousands of numbers forwards and backwards. But how can we actually do this? I mean, attaching meaning to a word sounds kind of esoteric, doesn't it? So how can we make this more actionable? Well, to put it simply, you just need to stick the new concept you're trying to learn to an old concept you already have stored in your memory. That's, for example, what happened in the Baker-Baker paradox. When it was a name, we couldn't attach it to anything, it was arbitrary, but when it was a job, we could attach it to the concept of the guy who makes delicious bread that we know of. And that's also how I teach students to learn topics like antimicrobials. Once they learn, for instance, the antibiotics and they move on to memorize the antifungals, I always encourage them to try to make connections between both classes. So for instance, let's say we're trying to memorize the mechanism of action of amphotericin B, which happens to destroy fungi by creating pores inside of the membranes. What a diligent student would do is try to memorize that concept as it is. But what an effective student would do, on the other hand, would be to try to memorize this by thinking about some other drug that they already know of, that they already have stored in the memory, and try to make the connection. For instance, an antibiotic called polymyxin also works by kind of creating pores and kind of destabilizing the membrane. So in their heads, this new antifungal, is not a new concept, it's just the polymyxin of fungi. And the cool thing is that those previous learned concepts don't necessarily have to be so technical as the previous example. They just need to be related enough so that your brain makes the connection. For instance, when I was learning the antiretrovirals, I used names of non-medical things I already knew to help me remember better the difficult names of these drugs. So for instance, there's a couple of medications called the non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors. I know, it's a mouthful, but there's a couple of names important in those class of antiretrovirals called efavirenz and nevirapine. And I don't know why, but I always tend to forget those names. So what I did to remember them better was to think about a couple of names that sounded like those two, but that belong to concepts I already know and that are easy for me to remember. I ended up thinking about Neville Longbottom holding an effervescent drink. And those couple of names were because Neville Longbottom, Neville, nevirapine, and effervescence, efavirenz. And I don't know, the image of Neville Longbottom, which I know is a Harry Potter character, holding an effervescent drink is very easy to remember. And when I think about that, that image traces me back to the couple of difficult antiretroviral names. These, in case you're wondering, are called retrieval cues, easily accessible ideas that our mind uses to retrieve difficult to remember concepts. They're one of the best study techniques I use, and you can learn all about them as well as more evidence-based learning techniques in my masterclass on the science of effective learning. This class was uploaded in an amazing platform called Skillshare, who are very kindly sponsoring this video. So the best way to describe Skillshare is as an online learning community, a place with thousands of amazing classes where people who want to improve their skills and explore their creativity come together to learn. For instance, I first joined the Skillshare to watch a class from Thomas Frank called Productivity for Creatives, build a system that brings out your best. And I love this class. There was one thing in particular that had a tremendous impact in my approach to content creation, which was something called the professional mindset. And that concept has been one of the most influential tips or advices that has allowed me to grow my main Spanish YouTube channel from 10 to 170,000 subscribers in just a couple of years. So I really encourage everyone to take a look at Skillshare and find more classes like Thomas class, because it's honestly an amazing platform. It has amazing classes on a wide variety of topics like personal growth and productivity, learning, business, marketing, you name it. Classes have an amazing quality, teachers are always very engaging, you can leave questions, projects, receive feedback. It's honestly amazing. And the best thing is that you can start your experience for free. You just need to be part of the first 1,000 subscribers that join the community using the 1-month free trial link you can find in the description below. Thanks again Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and I'll see you in the next one.